Psychedelics and meditation. Is there a crossover? Which is the best for healing? Which is the best for insight into the nature of consciousness? Are they complementary? Do they even lead to the same insights? Is one better than the other? I can sum the entire thing up in one sentence. No self, no problem. Let's talk about it. Let's do a deep dive into the topic of psychedelics and meditation. Hello there, I'm Jimmy, a meditation teacher based in the UK, and recently I've been invited to take part in a mushroom ceremony with Beckley Retreats in Jamaica. Psilocybin mushrooms, that is. Now this won't be my first psilocybin experience, but it will be my first time taking it in ceremony. I'm interested in this for a number of reasons, mostly because there's a wave of interest in psychedelics at the moment and that continues to grow. And also my meditation students are increasingly asking questions about it. And they're also going on retreats and they're feeding back about their experiences, which overall seem to be positive. Now, the questions I get on this topic generally boil down to two categories. Firstly, can psychedelics speed up the process of gaining insight and healing traditionally offered through meditation? And secondly, do the healing effects and insights gained from psychedelics last? Most of my students experience extremely positive long-term results from meditation, and now they're interested to know if the same can be said for psychedelics, or whether the psychedelic experience itself might be powerful, but then the effects are lost once the medicine wears off. Before we get into the studies, I'm going to give you a way of understanding meditation that'll help you see where the overlap between psychedelics and meditation might lie. Think of it this way. You can break the various aspects of meditation up into three parts. And these are, number one, the calming aspect. And this is what most Westerners are interested in. It's the calming, relaxing side of meditation, where practice is about finding presence, inner stillness, and silence. And then number two, there's the insight aspect of meditation. This is where we learn to observe the mind without becoming lost in thoughts, or we feel emotions without reacting, or we explore the nature of consciousness itself. And then number three, there's the awakening part of meditation. And this is a bit different to the other two aspects of meditation because this involves a shift in consciousness that goes right down to the locus of identity. It completely changes the way you understand yourself and life and your place in the world. It's a shift out of feeling like I'm just little old me in a big scary universe, and a shift into knowing your true identity beyond birth and death, beyond space and time. And when this happens, it's spontaneous. It's a big surprise. You would never see it coming, and you would never guess it would be like that. It's beyond all concepts and it's outside of anything the mind can imagine. It's impossible for me to even express it in words. And if you're skeptical about all that, well, don't worry. I'm just talking about what the experience feels like. I'm not making any grand metaphysical claims. Now, when looking into the overlap between meditation and psychedelics, it's useful to look at what they have in common in terms of brain activity. Here's a quote from Dr. Roland R. Griffiths, who is a professor at Johns Hopkins University. He said, recent studies show that meditation and psilocybin produce strikingly similar decreases in brain circuits responsible for self-referential processing. So what does that mean? Let's have a look at the brain and try to figure this out. This here is called the default mode network. The default mode network is a group of brain regions that are most active when you're resting, daydreaming, or thinking about yourself or thinking about the past. So when you're not focused on the outside world, like when you're relaxing, thinking about your day or imagining the future, the default mode network turns on. And when you start doing a task, like solving a problem or reading, the default mode network turns down so the other brain areas can take over. You can think of it like the default mode network. It's kind of like your brain's idle mode. It kicks in when you're not actively doing something, but you're still mentally active. So how does this relate to meditation and psilocybin? Well, both meditation and psilocybin decrease activity in the default mode network. which means less self-referential processing. Basically, the part of the brain that creates that familiar sense of being you has the volume turned down on it. Now remember, at the beginning of this video, I said no self, no problem. Well, now maybe you're starting to understand where that comes from. However, that's not the end of the story, because there's a massive difference between meditation and psilocybin. Meditation techniques are a powerful way to systematically investigate the nature of mind and self. That's a way that you can think of it. And psilocybin can be viewed as doing the same thing, but it's more like a crash course in investigating the nature of mind and self. So meditation allows you to gently immerse yourself in this new understanding, while psilocybin throws you in at the deep end, whether you like it or not. Therefore, psilocybin and meditation can be viewed as complementary techniques for the exploration of mind and self. Okay, so now we understand what's happening in the brain, but how does that translate to our actual lived experience? Well, psilocybin and meditation are tools that can help us in the following 4 ways. Number 1, they can enable us to be absolutely present in the moment rather than lost in the stories told by the mind. Number 2, they enable us to dispassionately observe and let go of pain, fear, and discomfort. Number 3, they can transform our conventional sense of self. And this could be a huge shift, like an awakening or an ego death, like I talked about earlier, or it might be a more down-to-earth insight, like recognizing I am not my mind or I am not my thoughts. And number 4, they can both help us recognize that the mind is capable of revealing knowledge that's not readily accessible in everyday waking consciousness. And in Sanskrit, this is known as prajna wisdom. That's a kind of spiritual wisdom that has nothing to do with logic or critical thinking. So let's look at a few studies and see how all of this plays out in real-world situations. The first study I want to show you is called Mindfulness Training Encourages Self-Transcendence by Decentering, and I'll put details of all the studies mentioned in the show notes. In this study, a group of students was split into 2 groups. The first group were given mindfulness training, and the second group were doing an active listening exercise. The study took place over 5 days, and the results revealed that participants in the mindfulness training group experienced an increase in something called decentering. Essentially, they became better at observing their internal experiences, such as thoughts, feelings, emotions, and physical sensations, without reacting, without being caught in the story. Now, the researchers found that the students who were better at decentering at the midway point of the training experienced higher levels of self-transcendence by the end of the training. So this suggests that as individuals learn to observe their thoughts and feelings non-reactively, that's mindfulness, they may be more likely to experience a sense of unity, oneness with the world around them. That's self-transcendence. And experiences like this are associated with increased compassion, altruism, and a greater sense of connection with others and the natural world. And the findings suggest that even brief mindfulness training, like this, just a few days, can lead to meaningful changes in how individuals perceive themselves and their relationship to the world. So think of it this way. Mindfulness leads to decentering, and decentering can lead to self-transcendent states. Now, when a person takes a psychedelic, such as psilocybin, also known as magic mushrooms, it works slightly differently. Instead of training to acquire the skill of decentering, they're thrust into a self-transcendent state, and then that leads to decentering as a side effect. So decentering, remember, is the ability to observe yourself. So do you see now how mindfulness meditation and psychedelics can lead to similar outcomes, but via very different routes? Like I said, mindfulness takes us to self-transcendent states via decentering, while psychedelics take us to decentering via self-transcendent states. It's like taking 2 different routes up the same mountain. But ultimately, we're getting to enjoy the same view when we get there. So what happens when we combine meditation and psychedelics? Well, that leads me to the second study that we're going to look at right now. In 2019, researchers at the University of Zurich conducted a study titled Characterization and Prediction of Acute and Sustained Response to Psychedelic Psilocybin in a Mindfulness Group Retreat. This study involved 39 experienced meditators participating in a 5-day mindfulness retreat. On the 4th day, participants were randomly assigned to receive either a dose of psilocybin or a placebo in a double-blind setup. So here are the 3 key findings from the study. Number 1. Participants who received psilocybin reported heightened feelings of self-transcendence, unity, and bliss compared to those who received just the placebo. Number 2. Despite the potent effects of psilocybin, those who had engaged in mindfulness meditation experienced minimal anxiety or distress during their psychedelic experience. Number 3. 4 months after the retreat, the psilocybin group demonstrated sustained improvements in mindfulness, self-acceptance, empathy, and overall psychosocial functioning. So let's recap. The participants of the mindfulness retreat who took the psychedelic seemed to experience a more powerful insight experience, with less anxiety than a person who takes psychedelics without the meditation. And the positive effects lasted longer. So that's pretty cool, right? So it seems that mindfulness meditation can protect you against the anxiety and confusion that can arise when you're tripping. Okay, so now on to the 3rd and final study that we're going to have a look at today. In 2017, a randomized double-blind study investigated the effects of psilocybin administered alongside a structured program of meditation and spiritual practices. The study involved healthy participants who were assigned to one of 3 groups. The first group were given very low dose of psilocybin, also known as magic mushrooms, on the 2 sessions, with moderate support for meditation and spiritual practice. Now, the second group were given a high dose of psilocybin, also with moderate support for meditation and spiritual practice. And the third group were given the same high dose, but with additional support for meditation and spiritual practice. So here are the key findings. Okay, the participants in both high-dose groups showed significant positive changes in psychosocial functioning, including an increase in interpersonal closeness, gratitude, life meaning and purpose, forgiveness, and an increase in daily spiritual experiences. Also, the positive changes in the high-dose group lasted beyond 6 months when the participants were reassessed. Another useful finding relates to the mystical type experiences brought on by psilocybin. A person who had a mystical experience was much more likely to enjoy a positive outcome. Therefore, you could say that profound subjective experiences do seem to indicate lasting change. This study was also useful for an insight into the role of meditation, spiritual practice, and support, because while both high-dose groups experienced benefits, the group with additional support for spiritual practices reported greater engagement with spiritual practices and meditation at the 6-month follow-up point. And this suggests that support structures enhance the integration of psychedelic experiences. So this was a really great study that underscores the potential for combining psilocybin with structured meditation and spiritual practices to produce lasting positive changes for the users. Let's recap. Is there a crossover between psychedelics and meditation? Absolutely yes. They both affect the default mode network in the brain and lead to decentering and self-transcendent states. Are they complementary? Yes. Studies show that psychedelics can speed up the progress of gaining insight into the nature of mind and self, and that leads to better outcomes for well-being and pro-social behavior. Do they lead to the same kind of insights? Well, it's certainly in the same ballpark, but it will be experienced very differently. Remember, the 2 different routes up the same mountain? Is one better than the other? For example, is meditation better than taking mushrooms? Well, that depends on your personal view. But you can think of meditation as the proven systematic path, whereas psychedelics are more like a crash course. Which is best depends on you, Like I said, mushrooms are definitely more risky, so it's worth having some support when you take those. But I guess the same can be said of meditation. Support will always help you. Which is the best one for healing? Again, that depends on you, but if you're going to try psychedelics, then I definitely recommend meditation to give you a better chance of having a good trip versus a bad trip. And finally, let's go back to the beginning. Do you remember that I started the video by saying no self, no problem? Well, does that make sense to you now? Both psilocybin and meditation can allow you to transcend the familiar sense of self so you can understand yourself in a new way that is normally hidden from you. And that leads to insight and healing. And that's pretty much everything I've got to say on this topic right now, but please follow my journey as I learn more and share it with you. I have future videos planned on what meditation techniques are best for preparing for a psychedelic journey, as well as how to integrate it. I'll also share my experience with psilocybin Beckley Retreats in Jamaica. I'm going there soon, so I'll let you know how it goes. So please like and subscribe and feel free to ask questions in the comments. And one final word on this. Please exercise extreme caution when taking psychedelics. They are extremely potent and should ideally be used under the supervision of a trained professional. So please stay safe with all of that. That's all for now, and I will see you in the next video.